Americans' poor opinions of the economy is having an impact on their decision on whether or not to start a family. A recent report found that a quarter of millennials and Gen Zers say they don't plan on becoming parents because of financial reasons. Dan Casey, some tips for people who are trying to start maybe planning a family and also dealing with the issues in terms of finances lately, because it is rough. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So a lot of people are having issues in terms of whether or not they start a family because it's so expensive. What are some of the factors that you think are driving up those decisions?
I think from the world that we're living in right now, the economy, right? The higher cost of living, inflation. I think people are realizing, it's a little bit more expensive than we thought to live. And to bring a child into this, especially if you have to pay for daycare, it's just super expensive. So, and I think people get, right now with the internet, of course, there's so much information out there, which is awesome. But the downside is there's so much information out there. So people, I think, get overwhelmed with the cost. And sometimes I've got 3 kids, and I don't think we put a whole lot of thought into it. We just did it, and somehow we made it through it. So it's, you make it work.
Kids are expensive as it is, Dan,
Yes.
but do you think it's worse in this economy?
I do, yeah. So, and again, it's just with, I think, the higher cost of living and the inflation, and you go to the grocery store, we all see it, we all feel it. So I think that's really, and especially when you throw in the mix, you got to buy diapers and all that goes along with childcare, that I think it really starts to overwhelm people, and they're thinking like, maybe we should just wait.
Yeah, we actually ran a story last week about 2 friends who decided to get a home together because otherwise they couldn't afford it and they didn't want to keep renting.
Interesting, yeah.
So do you think that this is kind of changing the landscape of social norms and what we saw in the past, because everything really is so expensive?
Yes, and probably like maybe the trend of waiting until you're older to have children, until maybe your career is more set. It is interesting. I found when I'm dealing with people that are coming into my office that are nearing retirement or in retirement, really the biggest factor I found was they seem to make it work on one person's income. So assuming both we're working, if you can make it on one income, then you can certainly have children and it shouldn't affect you. And then when the children grow up and go into school, and then one spouse goes back to work, you've proven that you can live on that, save all that money from that income, and people can retire earlier than they thought, and with a lot more money with using that philosophy. So it certainly helps if you're thinking of bringing children into the world to live on the one income.
And speaking of saving, is that something you can do in terms of family planning? Just start putting money away beforehand?
Absolutely, and if you can't do that, at least get all your credit card debt paid off. And we've talked countless times on that, right? And strategies to do that. Because if you're living, lean, then it shouldn't be, as big of an issue. But yeah, doing that, and then just again budgeting, knowing where your money's going, so you're not caught by surprise.
And speaking of, there are a lot of people who are just kind of like, oh, okay, I guess we're having a kid. We got to figure this out.
And you do, somehow you do.
Right. So if you are planning, what does that look like in terms of putting money aside? Because like you said, with daycare and groceries, those things, it's going to start taking down what you have saved anyway. So
yeah.
Do you have to have a lot put away?
So, again, it's budgeting and having a liquid amount of money that you can have access to. And I really do think you brought it up. Childcare is the big one, which is why I go back to if the one spouse, if you can live on the one income and the one spouse can stay at home with the children so that you don't have to do daycare, then obviously that's ideal. Not everybody can, but maybe that's when family and in-laws can come in and help and pitch. It takes a village, right? So. Yeah, I think daycare is a big one, but other than that, you just somehow make it work.
Yeah.
Again, maybe less trips to Starbucks.
Yeah.
Who
knew we'd get to a point where the economy is a form of birth control?
Yeah, right. That's how bad it's gotten.
Yeah.
But inflation is coming down. Hopefully the costs will come down, and we'll see maybe these Gen Z and millennials that study will be redone, and they're more likely to have kids, maybe.
Sure. Anything else you want to add, Dan?
Just the Secure Act. This isn't talked very much about. That passed in 2020. 2022 allows people with newborns, and even if you're adopting, you can take $5,000 out of your retirement account. Not that I would always recommend this, penalty-free and income tax-free if you repay it.
All right. Dan Casey, words of wisdom. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.